Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Gaming and the next farming test on the channel. This time we're looking at Elder Guardian farming using a unique destructive play idol to make Maven summon additional bosses. This has been a really enjoyable strategy, as most of the loot that drops is guaranteed and it's really easy to sell on the exchange. You also have a chance of getting big awakened gems from the invitations, along with things like Orbs of Conflict and valuable divination cards. Now you will need a semi-decent character that can quickly dispatch both the Guardians and the additional bosses, because obviously the longer you take with those, the less money you're going to make in the long run. Now when I first started this strategy, I knew it was never going to compete with the super juice farms unless I got really lucky drops, because your loot is pretty fixed into the bosses. But I did really enjoy it. It's fairly laid back, and like I said, it has guaranteed returns rather than spiky returns from jackpot items. It is also investment free. All you need is some alchemies and scours once you've got your idol set up and you're good to go. In the long run, you will sustain the maps. I've been running this strategy for a few days and the average profit was probably around 8 divines per hour. This is assuming you can complete 3 rotations in 1 hour. So it's 12 maps and 3 invitations. On average, the maps took me anywhere between 2.5 to 4 minutes depending on the map layout. If you can stay under 4 minutes on average, you'll easily complete 3 rotations in 1 hour. Like I said, I didn't use any scarabs in this strategy, it's just alch and go, as most of the loot is guaranteed from the bosses, but I didn't want to just run the map scoured because it limits the loot that drops from the rest of the monsters. So before we go over the idol setup, let's talk about the pros and cons of the strategy and just explain a bit more about destructive play and what it is. So we'll start with destructive play. It's a node on the Atlas tree which has made its way to unique idols. It puts Maven influence on your maps, and when you fight the boss, Maven will summon 1 to 3 additional bosses, and they all count as the final map boss, which is important when we go on to the idols. The downside is that the more of the map you clear, the more of the bosses will spawn, so you can't boss rush on this strategy or you'll never self-sustain your maps. So if we go on to the pros and cons as I see it, in terms of pros, in the long run, like I've said, you will self-sustain your Elder maps with the right idol setup. The loot liquidates very easily and very quickly for decent currency on the exchange, so you can fill your 10 exchange slots, go and get to mapping, come back, take all your loot and carry on. There is no downtime for selling whatsoever. The idol setup is very cheap. The unique idol is 10C, and the idols that we're looking for, which are all the same, are 5 to 10 chaos each. And finally, you don't need an amazing character to run this strategy. If you can kill Guardians and bosses fairly quickly, your character's going to be fine to do this strategy. In terms of cons, without lucky drops, you're very unlikely to break 10 divinations per hour, since these maps always take a little bit of time to run, as you pretty much have to full clear the map to get the bosses to spawn, and all Elder Guardians have phases, 2 with some immunity phases in there as well. Secondly, you have to run the maps that drop. Even with my favourites filled out, I did not drop that many favourite Guardian maps. That means you do need to run bad layouts on occasion with backtracking layouts, and that is where the time gets pushed up. I would say my normal map completion time, if I pick my favourite map, is about 2 minutes. If I then have to run something where I have to go in lots of different directions, it might be 3.5 to 4 minutes. This part of the strategy can get a little frustrating, but it might get better as you do more and more, because you should start to get more of your favourite maps. Thirdly, RNG can be an issue with this strategy. On average, you're going to drop a Guardian map per map. The problem is, you don't know what Guardian map you're going to drop. You might have the situation where you have 10 of one map, 10 of another, 9 of another, and 0 of the fourth, which means you then can't carry on your rotation because Maven can only witness the boss once. If that comes to it, you either have to buy maps from trade, or you have to go and run some T16 maps until you get the map to drop that you need. I didn't run into this scenario, but I could definitely see it happening if you get unlucky. So let's move on to the idol setup. It is nice and easy. You need 1 destructive play unique idol, and you want the rest of your idols to be final map boss has a chance to drop an Elder Guardian map. These can roll from I think 1.5 to 2.5%. I would aim for over 2%. I didn't fill my idol slots, as at the time I started this strategy I got a little bit fed up buying the idols, so I'm about 4% short of where I should be. With the normal chance to drop a boss map at about 3% and all your idols, you should have around a 30% chance to drop a Guardian map from each boss that you kill. So that is all of the extra summon bosses and the Guardian, they all count towards that. So with the simple idol setup out of the way, let's move on to how to run these maps. Alch and Go is fine and there's no scarabs needed and no map device costs. Firstly, you need to ensure you have the map device set to Maven influence, because otherwise these extra bosses won't spawn. You put in your map and off you go. Do remember that you need to kill as many mobs in the map as possible to get the 3 extra bosses to spawn. The good thing about Elder Guardians is that they're in a separate arena, so even if you do accidentally trigger the boss arena, as long as you don't go into that portal, the extra bosses don't trigger, so you can go and clear the rest of the map and come back to the portal later. So you go inside, kill the boss, kill the extra bosses, collect your loot and leave. Fairly simple. Once you've killed and witnessed all 4 Guardians, you can then complete a Maven invitation by speaking to Kirak. Make this rare with alchemy orbs and roll it until you get mods that you're happy with. Always run these rare, as you could be missing out on big loot drops and extra Maven splinters if you just run the base invitation. Then once you finish your farming session, it's as simple as going and selling all of your fragments that have dropped on the currency exchange, list any T17 maps or awakened gems you might have dropped on trade, and enjoy your easily accessible profit. One tip on the exchange, which I see a lot of people fall foul of, is don't just accept the offers that are on the exchange. Check the difference between the sell price and the buy price. To do this, you just hover over the price and press Alt and it will bring up a second listings of prices. You want to price your invitations amongst the most competitive sell orders. Don't go by what people want to buy them for. If you just went through the exchange with everything you did, accepting all the buy orders, you'll be losing out in divines worth of currency over a large sample size. So just for completionist sake, this is my Wealthy XR tab after selling my loot on the exchange and my T17 maps on trade. You can see a good chunk of profit is now exchanged into chaos, with only some odd scarabs that you'll just keep until you have bulk to sell, and some other boss maps that I want to run myself, but again you could list these on trade if you wanted to. That is pretty much it for this one, short and sweet again. If you think you'd enjoy this type of farm, I can definitely recommend it. It's fairly chill, it's decent enough profit, it's nothing extraordinary, but if you like to run this sort of content, I think the profit is good enough to run to be able to invest further into your character or build a different character. Thank you very much for watching, take care, and I'll see you all in the next video.